Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. I am Jen Bordeaux with New Direction Family Law, coming to you with another segment of Family Law Uncorked. Today, I am joined by a partner and attorney at New Direction Family Law, Sarah Hink. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning. It's a witchy Friday, isn't it?
It is. It's Family Law Uncorked with a flair.
Yes.
We obviously, at New Direction, we like to have fun and dress up. So here, Sarah and I are coming to you with some of our costumes here. So today we wanted to talk about something that can kind of be a little scary, but doesn't have to be, which are legal fees. How much does a divorce attorney cost or a family law matter cost? There's a lot that goes into it. It's not a simple answer. And so that's what we wanted to hop up here and talk a little bit about today. So I brought in the big guns to help me do that because she gets way more into the legal fees and can answer all those questions. So starting off, Sarah, just looking at legal fees, how do you, because I know like for us in consultations, we discuss, or you guys discuss, all the attorneys discuss, what's called an initial retainer during that time. And if you're not familiar with the legal world and how that billing and retainers and everything works, you're kind of at a loss and it kind of hits you in the face. So how do you guys come up with initial retainers that you quote? Because I know ours are quoted on a case-by-case basis. We don't have blanket retainer fees or anything like that. So what all goes into consideration whenever you're discussing a retainer fee with someone?
So pretty much everything we gather in the consultation is to first let us know what issues we're going to be addressing in your case. And then that will also lead us to determine how much is required for a retainer. So for instance, we'll ask you questions during the consultation about just looking at custody, how is the co-parenting and how contentious is it, and have they filed in court? Do we need to file in court, or is this something we can resolve in a simple parenting agreement or in a separation agreement? So we kind of take it there because we know that if it's going to be very contentious and it ends up in court, that's going to require more time on your case. So if it requires more time on your case, we're going to need a higher retainer. And so let's look at what the retainer is. It's basically a deposit into your own little bank account with a firm. That's how I like to describe it to people. And we bill off of it. So at the end of the month, you get the statement that shows, Sarah phone call to opposing counsel, Sarah went to court and that spent this much money or this much time at court, and look at your hourly rate. And currently my hourly rate is $3.15. So if I spend an hour in court, then that $3.15 is going to come out of the retainer. So that's where it goes to, how messy your case is and how contentious it is going to reflect how much time we spend on your case and therefore how much retainer is needed. So across the board, it's going to be, what we learn in the consultation and in your situation.
And I'll say a caveat with that and keeping in mind and that consultation, our consultations generally last around an hour, sometimes a little less, honestly, sometimes a little bit more. But it's a snapshot of that person's situation. So there's no way for you don't have a crystal ball. You can't predict everything that's going to happen in a case. And, you're not going to, even if people are thinking and telling you about their situation, they're not going to be able to capture every single detail about a case to be able to know exactly how much it's going to cost.
Right.
From my understanding, you guys also quote off of everyone's case is unique to their situation, but you quote retainers based off of situations similar.
Correct. So, we look at the average amount that people end up spending overall when their case is finished. And we say, okay, well, what were the situations in that case? Was there just custody, or was it equitable distribution? Were there properties to divide? Were there businesses involved? And if there are businesses involved, how much does that usually uptick a little bit because there's more of a fact finding in that scenario? So we just look at in the past how much it generally costs, like an average amount, and start there. As you were just saying, we do not have a crystal ball, even though I'm wearing a little crystal today, but we cannot predict the future. We also cannot predict how the other side is going to act, if they're going to frustrate things, or if they're going to work amicably with us and keep the costs low. So it really is a moving target, the actual end cost, because if you pay that retainer and you are able to resolve issues pretty simply and nice and amicably, then you're most likely going to get some of that money back.
Yeah. And that's one thing that, we aim to really be transparent at New Direction, period. But especially when it comes to legal fees, because we don't want people to misconstrue how things work. We're not trying to hide anything from anyone. And so, we try to be as upfront and honest as possible and say, there's the chance that if everything wraps up and case is closed and you've got, funds remaining in your account, then those will be returned to you. To the opposite effect, if there's continued work or if something blows up, and I know people think, oh, we're in a really amicable situation. And then sometimes those are the ones that start out super amicable and then something happens because emotions are involved. Right. Separating lives, you've got kids involved sometimes, money involved, and something might blow it up, and there's no way that we can anticipate that. And so that might require, or just ongoing litigation or something might require fund replenishment, which is on a case-by-case basis as well.
Yes. So you really don't know what's going to happen with the other side, and in some cases the other party might get a boyfriend that you're concerned about, so then you want to go after even harder in custody, because think about it, you're separating lives at this point in some respect. So you're not going to know really what's going on the other side at all, and that's going to be very frustrating, and there's a lot of uncertainty there. So that's what drives those emotions up and maybe causes people not to be so agreeable when they said they were going to be agreeable. I think a lot of people get surprised by that, and then I say, well, what were the issues during the marriage? Well, there was communication issues. We never saw eye to eye. And I'm like, well, those issues are going to be present during the divorce as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the biggest or most frequently asked questions that we get sometimes is, is there a way to make the opposing party pay for my attorney fees? So what do you have to say about that?
Well, the easiest way for me to do that is to cast a spell on them, of course. Otherwise, so let's look at it this way. If we're not in court, the only way to get them to pay for your attorney's fees is for them to agree to do that. And that people typically don't like to agree to pay for the other person's attorney's fees, especially if they've already paid for their own attorney's fees. So sometimes in mediation, when we're dealing with a lot of different issues and it's all on the table, like a global settlement, you can kind of throw attorney's fees in there in exchange for something else and kind of use that as a negotiating piece. If you're in court, there are certain actions that you can ask for attorney's fees when you file for. So like custody and child support and spousal support, you can file a motion for attorney's fees. Now that does not mean that you're going to receive attorney's fees. The court still has the power to grant that or deny your request for attorney's fees. So they'll look at, depending on what you're asking for, the spousal support, for instance, and finding ability to pay and making sure you're in need of attorney's fees. And sometimes, like in child support, they'll look at bad faith as an issue there too. So it depends on your case and your situation.
Yeah, but point blank is it's retroactive. So to initiate work with the firm, the initial retainer is still due up front, and we can't accept funds from an opposing party. So in that regard, no, we can't get that they can't pay for your attorney's fees, but up front to initiate services.
Right. If you're still together, if you're still married and living together, you can use your marital funds to retain an attorney. That happens a lot. That will tip off the other side that you're doing it. They'll likely see that charge on your credit card. But there's nothing, if you're still together, you can do that as well. And there's people who are amicable and they discuss the separation before they separate, and they're acknowledging that they both are using marital funds to pay for their own attorneys. So that's something we can figure out too, and make that equal for everyone involved.
Good to know. Let's now discuss contingency fees, because it's a very frequently asked question whenever someone is calling in about services, about, if I, sign up with you guys and then you get paid after the case is over. And to my knowledge, we cannot operate off of contingency fees, and contingency meaning that if there's a settlement awarded or whatever, we get a certain percentage of it. So can you speak to contingency fees in family law or the lack thereof?
So in most cases, you cannot do that for family law. And you're thinking about, custody. How are you going to make a contingency off of that? Because it's in the best interest of the child. What determines a win in custody case? So, and it's 5 state bar rules too. So it's not just us at this firm saying we're not going to do it. It's just generally you cannot do it. For ED cases, there is some ways you can do contingency fees for ED cases, the equitable distribution, but we do not do that at our firm. Generally, you're going to see contingency cases on personal injury lawsuits where people are at the beginning, they know they're going to get a win, probably most likely a settlement from the insurance company, but they aren't aware of how much it's going to be. So the law firm will say, well, whatever it is end up being, then we're going to get 20% of it or whatever their fee is. So those areas of law, they can do it. We do not do it with family law.
And I think we, as a society, if you're not in the legal field, that's what you're used to seeing on TV is the commercials for, personal injury attorneys, and we don't get paid if you don't win kind of thing.
Right.
So, it's easy to assume that that's how all, legal fees operate, but definitely not the case. So, yeah, like you said, you can't really have a contingency fee off of a child custody.
And a lot of times no one really feels like they win those cases anyway. So that would mean no attorneys get paid, and we can't have them. We'd be out of business.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of winning when it comes to family law matters. Honestly, it's just everybody walks away equally unhappy. I don't know.
Well, we try to make them equally stable at least, and happy for the family in general, or can be in the future. So how are we gonna get you out of this so you can go forward in the future in the best way possible?
And then people will call in and say, well, my friend went through a divorce and it cost them this amount. Is that what it's going to cost me? And I think that just kind of goes back to every person's situation is specific. And yes, your friend or your family member may have gone through a divorce, but it's not the same as your situation. Maybe they weren't involved in court, or, just because sometimes with court, the ins and outs and the procedures that are required and the document gathering and things like that, there's no way that we can get around that. We don't want to. We want to do everything correctly. And that takes time, and it takes, work on the case, and it's just required by court. And so we try to, educate and let people know this is the process, but it is a process, and it's part of the work. And that's one of those things that you were talking about as far as circumstantial things in someone's case that are going to affect, legal dollars and what an initial retainer might be, or continued work that might be on the case.
Yeah, people get frustrated when you ask for documents to review, but they want you to draft a separation agreement. And as your attorney, I have to be able to advise you on your outcome and your legal circumstances here. And I can't do that without knowing your financial situation. And I think that gets very frustrating for some people, or when the attorney on the other side wants to see documentation and they don't want to have to go do the work to get those documents over to them or let them see their bank accounts. So that will stall the process and just create more work for us having to explain and go back and forth with the other side about what's needed, instead of, trusting your attorney that, getting these documents is going to speed your case along and resolve those issues sooner rather than later.
Yeah. So in wrapping up, let's talk about how people can help stretch their legal dollars. We talked a little bit about some of the things that are out of our control as far, if the other side, if the situation is very contentious, or if the other side is just not cooperating, whether that's an opposing counsel or another attorney on the side, or, just the opposing party, period. So those are definitely things that can affect or inflate legal dollars, to include, because we get this question a lot too, if we've got someone that is out of county and they're interested in having us represent them, where our home base is in Raleigh. So travel time is obviously going to affect your legal fees as well for the attorney if they have to travel outside of the county to the courtroom.
Correct.
So what are some things that people can do to help stretch those legal dollars for their case?
The more organization you do on your end, we were just talking about those documents. So if I tell you I need 6 months worth of bank account statements, credit card statements, and give you a list of documents to produce, whatever organization you can do on your end to make that easier for us to review, the better. So that means, don't attach one statement to one email and send that to us. Then we're going in one email at a time and downloading it and reorganizing things. So that's a simple task that will keep your bill low. We have ShareFile that we currently use, and we'll send you a link, and you can just upload all your documents at once. Same thing when it goes to text messages, compiling them instead of taking a screenshot. There's certain softwares we use out there to take a whole, make a whole PDF of your entire conversation with someone. And we have that software, or you can get that software yourself. And just setting a phone call. I find that people end up spending more money. There's more time involved if you're constantly sending emails. If you have a lot of questions and you're someone that's going to want follow-up answers, it's probably best just to set an appointment to have a phone call rather than sending numerous emails throughout the day.
Yeah, just trying to be succinct. And I mean, we're not trying to cut corners on a case or anything like that, but if those are things in the background as the client that you can do, organizing those documents, organizing your thoughts, get all your questions together. We always, China and I advise during the intake call when someone first calls in for services to, hey, write down the questions that you have right now, because you're probably going to have more during the consultation. So we want to make sure we get all these answered. But that goes for, going along with the case too. I mean, sending 10 different emails at 10 o'clock at night, to sift through. And it's hard. We get that. We're not, we don't take that lightly. We know that going through a divorce can be one of the most terrible times in your life. And it's emotional and it's stressful, and the uncertainty is can be crippling. But trying to take a step back and see what you can do to be organized in that regard and help can go a long way with legal dollars. In addition, we have designated paralegals. I mean, when someone signs up with a firm, they have a designated legal team. And so our motto is kind of the most qualified person at the least hourly rate. Of course, always with the attorney's supervision, but that also helps because obviously a paralegal's hourly rate is going to be less than an attorney. So where we can, we definitely try to, and that helps with the case flow and efficiency and answering questions that the paralegal can, and things like that. So definitely all things to keep in mind. Anything else?
I think it's just important for people to realize how much time we do devote to their cases. And you'll see that on the statement they receive at the end of the month. But because it's a certain area of law where there's a lot of emotion taking place, and there's a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainty, like you mentioned before, we don't mind having the emails and the phone calls and talking with our clients, because we want to get to know them. We want to know what's important to them so we can help solve their problems. So it's a tough time, and we understand that it's expensive to have quality representation, but it's very important to get through this with someone that's going to be a good advocate for you and also take the time to get to know you in your case.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we've gotten calls too where people have gone online and done like legal Zoom or whatever it is and just had, a blanket agreement they just plugged information to. And then so many times they come back to us and either it's not necessarily fixable, or it costs twice as much than to try and fix it. So we understand the need. We're all there. We're all being, I think now, more money conscious than ever, but sometimes it can be to your detriment not to get, like you said, quality legal representation, whether that's us, we would hope it would be us, but whether that's us or someone else, but somebody who focuses, if not exclusively practices family law, that knows the ins and outs and things.
Yeah, and not even just with those like online agreements that people fill out. Yeah, those are hard to fix if you can fix them at all. But sometimes people go with lower quality attorneys who start their case and end up in court litigating, and it's a mess to dig out of. Or you start you start on a foot backwards because you didn't get proper representation in a court hearing, and the judge already has this understanding of your case, which may not be true, or at least haven't heard your true story. And then you're going to have to go change attorneys, and oftentimes changing the attorneys is going to be costly too, because someone's going to have to spend the time to review your case. So it's really important on the get-go to have consultations with different attorneys in the area until you find someone that you're going to connect with, that you like, that you trust, and is going to represent you well. There's no harm in having a consultation with more than just one attorney.
Yeah, and we've got another video that's on our YouTube channel or here on our Facebook page that talks about things to consider whenever you are looking at hiring a family law attorney, as well as, and there's all kinds of things, really just like you said, it's a good fit for that particular person, and that can be a myriad of different things. So I would say overall, when looking at how much does a divorce attorney cost, the answer is, as always, it depends. So it's not, we can't unfortunately provide a direct answer because that's just not the nature of a family law or the legal world most times. So that's why it's so important. That's part of the consultation in determining that. So we're not just, when China and I are on the phone with someone, we're not trying to blow smoke and say, I'm sorry. One, we can't quote legal fees, period, not being an attorney. But also, we don't know. We don't know all the ins and outs, and that's exactly what the comprehensive consultation is for, is to help determine that. So as we wrap up, Sarah, anything else to add about legal fees and the witchery of divorce costs?
It's scary, but you're going to get through it. And spending your legal fees in the right place with the right person will hopefully help you save money, or at least recoup some money from the actual divorce. And you always want someone that's going to have your back, and especially when you're dealing with money, when you're separating and dividing your assets. So important to think about that too.
Absolutely. So we have a little bit of information on our website as well about legal fees. But if you ever have any questions, you can absolutely give us a call. We are happy to answer any of those questions. And we thank you for joining us for another segment of Family Law Uncorked with Blair. We hope everyone has
an edition.
Yeah. We hope everybody has a great Friday, a wonderful weekend, a happy Halloween, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Jen.